Principle 2. Anticipation. The anticipation, or the antic, is a movement that is used to build up energy before a bigger or faster move. For example, an archer draws back her arrow before she shoots. In the Wile E. Coyote example, he takes 2 big steps back before running forward. That's a very exaggerated antic. In the punching cowboy example, you can see he swings his arm and torso back before punching. In this lesson, we'll go over some more examples and then move into Maya to animate a rig anticipating down before a jump. So, in this example, we see a hop versus a full-on jump. This is the anticipation pose before the hop, and this is the anticipation pose before jumping higher into the air. It wouldn't be as believable if the character only hopped like this and leaped into the sky like this. Anticipation is also how you show that something has weight. If there was a really heavy guy trying to jump, he might have to squat all the way down here to only jump up a little bit. In video games, anticipation can be part of the gameplay. In Super Smash Bros., the longer you charge up your attack, the more powerful it becomes. In this example, we have Captain Falcon bringing his fist all the way back, and he can hold it there to charge up his attack stronger and stronger before letting it go. Anticipation is played around in games to either be useful to the player, like in that example, or they are kept at a minimum to not slow down the character's ability to react. If there's too much anticipation, but it doesn't actually give a stronger attack, then the player is not going to want to play that character, and it will feel like there's too much lag between each attack. Anticipation isn't always that exaggerated. A subtle version of anticipation is a weight shift before someone walks. Watch the screen right version of this walk cycle and see how her hips sway left before swaying right when she walks. The sway left is the anticipation before the walk. If you were animating this walk cycle, you could also have a little bit of anticipation before she walks with her head leaning a little far back before moving forward into her stride. So you're going to use anticipation in almost every animation you do. But I honestly wish this principle was called antic, overshoot, and settle, because that's what you'll be doing much more often than only an antic. I remember when I learned this technique and I wrote these 3 words down on a post-it note and stuck it on my desk so I wouldn't forget to use it every time I went to animate. Let me explain what this is. For example, if we watch a pitcher throw a ball, before throwing it, he brings the ball all the way back here, and that's our anticipation pose. He brings his arm forward and releases it right here. That's our key pose, or storytelling pose. But the arm doesn't stop there. It keeps moving. That's the overshoot pose. The character is moving past the original keyframe because there is all that movement that needs time to decelerate and slow down. And when the arm finally slows down to a stop, that's called the settle. If there was no overshoot and settle, the character would bring the ball back, go to the key pose, the ball would fly, but the arm would stop here. And it would feel like it hit a wall, and it wouldn't look natural. The simplest example of this is when you pluck a guitar string. You pull the string back, that's the antic. You let go, the string goes all the way to the other side, past its initial position, that's the overshoot. Then it vibrates back in place, overshooting until it's in the middle, where it started. Antic, overshoot, and settle is used a ton in acting animation. Watch this acting shot from Disney's Moana. Try to see if you can pinpoint where the anticipations, overshoots, and settles are. Okay, so he's talking. Here's when he anticipates this way. He picks up the chicken, brings it forward. That's your key pose. Also, when he points, he anticipates the point right here. And then he points, and there's a slight overshoot on his finger right here. That's your overshoot into the key pose of him pointing. Also at the end, his body overshoots and settles into this pose. Right here, you can see the shoulders go down with the hands and then settle back up. Here's an animation done twice. One just going from pose to pose, the other one with an antic, overshoot, and settle. A bad animator might do something on the left. The character just moves from one pose to the next. It settles nicely, but the one on the right is way more natural. Let me show you where the anticipation and overshoot is on the character on the right. So here's its key pose. This is the other key pose. That would be the same as the animation on the left, but I have it going down at the start in anticipation, and then going up just a little to overshoot the final key pose. Adding the anticipation and overshoot are little things you can do to make your animation look a lot more natural. Okay, now that we've went over a bunch of examples of anticipation, let's open up Maya and animate a jump. Alright, now that we have Maya open, let's bring in our rig. File, create reference with options, use namespaces, and I like to call it walker_A. If you have multiple rigs in there, it would be B or C. Let's just keep it at A for now. Reference, go to your ultimate walker rig, open. And there's something wrong with the shaders, but it's no big deal. Just turn on two-sided lighting and it'll go away. Before we start animating, I want to create a shelf button so I can select all the controllers at once. So not all the controllers are being shown right now because this is an FK and IK rig. Most human rigs with arms and legs have an FK or an IK option on their legs and arms. So let me show you what that is. So if you click on one of these controllers near the feet, in the channel editor, you can see there's an attribute called IK-FK blend. You can click on that and middle mouse drag to turn it off or on to switch between FK or IK leg. So all IK is its world space position. So if you move the foot over here and then move the body, the foot stays in one place. If you change it to FK, then it's more of a puppet rig, and if you move the foot, then the foot will follow the body. So select both of these controllers on the feet and change it to 0.5 in the attributes. Now we have all the controllers shown. Before we select the controllers, let's just change our view to only polygons and NURBS curves, and then check all these objects off and only select curves. Alright, now go to your script editor. Select all your controllers, and what I like to do is deselect the main controller, so hold control and then left click and it'll unselect the main controller. And then what you're going to want to do is highlight the last two lines of code and then middle click and drag and drop into the shelf. Click Mel, right click on the icon that was just created, edit, go to shelves, icon label, name it something like Walker. I have a bunch of walkers already up there, so I'll name it Walker 4. Save all shelves, and there we have a button up there that will select all the controllers. Go back down here and change your FK-IK switch back to IK. Okay, let's get a ground plane in here, and then we'll start animating the jump. Hide the grid, turn on ambient occlusion, sweet. Let me save this. Alright. I want to make this jump about 48 frames long. Select all your controllers and hit S on the first frame. And let's make this pose more interesting, like he's ready to do something. So let's just have and these controllers are kind of weird on the feet. Usually these are the ones that move the feet, but for some reason these diamonds are the ones you're going to need. So let's just move these into something more interesting. Bring the knees apart a little bit, and maybe not so much down. Maybe a little bit like this. All right. Also, let's bring the feet out a little bit. Rotate them. Okay, that's a decent looking pose. Let's put that on the last frame too. So an easy way to do that, instead of right clicking, copying, and pasting, you can also just middle mouse click, and drag and hold, and then release and hit S, and then you've copied that pose over to the last frame or wherever you need it. All right, let's put them into the air. Go halfway between 48 is 24. We're going to grab this body controller and lift him up. Hit S, just to make sure that it gets keyed. It will all key on, as long as you have this checked, the auto key. And then I also want to straighten him out a little bit. When he's in the air, he can be more level. Okay, let's play it. So now we're going to add the anticipation down. At frame 12, let's grab all of his controllers and middle mouse click, drag, and release and hit S. And now he doesn't move until frame 12. Let's bring his body controller down more. He's going to be bending his knees more. The rig kind of looks like it's breaking, but that's okay, as long as you get the idea that he's compressing down before his jump. We'll have him bend a little bit more that way too. Cool. And when he lands, we can have it at frame 36, and you can just, let's make sure 12 is keyed with all the controllers first. And then we can just middle mouse drag and drop onto 36. And let's watch that. Cool. So now he compresses down, jumps into the air, and lands, and settles back into his original position. So let's pretend this is a bouncing ball. We're going to need some more hang time, so we're going to do that just like we did in the first lesson. Click on his body controller, go to the key where he's in the air, and middle click and drag and hold shift, and pull this so you get a little bit more hang time. That feels better. Alright, now what I want to do is ease out of the first keyframe, settle into an anticipation for longer, and then when he lands, I want him to have more time in this pose before he overshoots into settling into his last pose. I'm going to show you an easy way to do this. So let's select all your keyframes, go to the first frame, go 2 frames over, hit S, click on it, shift left click, and then left click and drag it 2 frames over. That'll just give us a little bit more time to ease into the movement of him moving down. So we're going to just repeat this across the whole animation. So do that the opposite way when he's down, on the other side too. So then it holds longer before he jumps. And we already increased the hang time with this keyframe, so you can leave it alone. But then you're going to do it when he lands. Cushion on that side, cushion on this side, and then cushion on the very last frame. Cool. Hit play. Great. Let's take a look at the Y translate. Make sure it's all good still. Okay, so that's a little bit too flat now. Let's fix that, and then let's take a closer look at what's happening on each of the keys. So we can actually smooth this out a little bit. Maybe have this one come down a little bit more. And then let's do the same thing at the end, just so it's a little bit smoother of a graph. And then the overshoot, we can just move it above the last keyframe, and then let's actually make this animation a little bit longer. Let's make it 52 frames. Select all your keys, grab frame 48, move it that way, grab frame 44, and move it to 46. Then you have a little bit more time of it settling. There's your overshoot and settle. Let me save this again. So what I don't like about this animation so far is the way that he lands is exactly how he takes off. So let me just change that a little bit and make the rotation on the ball keep rotating. So it starts to rotate to the right and then it just starts rotating left again. So we're going to have it continue rotating right. And then when it catches, it can end up in the same pose. So let's see how that feels. Yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay, great. The only thing we really need to do now is just polish up the feet. I'm going to teach you guys how to animate with FK and IK switches now. So go over to the feet. Click on both feet controllers. So frame 16 is going to be the last frame that I want it to be in IK. When it's FK, it'll be easier to animate into the air because the controllers will follow the feet. So let's hit a key on 17, and then the same thing when it lands, the frame right before is going to be its last frame being FK. So from frame 17 to 31, it will be in FK. So let's make sure that's FK. And then make sure this is an FK. I'm just making those values 0. Let's watch it. Cool, that looks funny. Now we can animate freely on the FK controllers. Some rigs have a blending mode where you can match the position that it was in IK, and then it'll translate it over to FK, but this rig is a little bit more basic and it doesn't have it, but that's okay. We can actually just animate it frame by frame. So I'm going to hit this key again and actually deselect the body controller. You don't need this. We're going to just animate on the legs, and this controller is just squash and stretch. We don't really need that for this animation. So select all the controllers, deselect the body, hit S and hit S. Now we have a clean workspace in between here. Alright. So to go in between frames is the greater than and less than symbol on your keyboard. So there is onion skinning in Maya, but we can just eyeball this for now. I don't typically use onion skinning in Maya. It's not very good most of the time. So I'm making sure that his contact pose before he goes in the air is really straight and it's as stretched out as it can. Because if he jumped up into the air with bent legs, it would look like he just levitated and he's not actually pushing off. So this pose is actually really important and it's worth doing frame by frame for. So what I'm doing is just making sure that it looks good and matches the frame before. Let's do the other side. Can bring his ankle down more. That looks pretty good. Actually, bring the leg forward. Okay, how does that feel? That seems pretty good. Let's do it on the landing pose too. Let's take both of these ankles and rotate them down. Make sure it's good from this side too. Okay, I think we're good on that. Let's play it again. Awesome. The last thing we can do is play with how the legs look in the air. Let's go to frame 24 and see if we can maybe pose them to be more natural. So since he pushed mostly off of this leg, you can keep that one a little bit more straight. Maybe rotate it like this. We're just trying to get something that looks natural. And then this one, maybe we can have it up a little bit and more relaxed. And then let's see how that looks. Looks a little stiff. I'm gonna change something. I'm gonna just add a little bit of overlap. I'll explain what overlap is in another lesson, but it's pretty much just when something drags behind. So I'm gonna add that onto the screen left leg. There we go. Now it looks like it's floating a little bit as he's falling. That feels better. Alright, so I'm going to hide the curves, hide the graph editor, and let this play. Sweet. This animation is looking pretty good. You guys can do whatever you want to it. You can change the anticipation or make him jump higher or change the legs up. If you guys were struggling through this and don't really understand, please go back and watch it again. I know the FK and IK stuff can be kind of technical, but it's really useful. Once you guys feel confident with your animation, be sure to play blast it, take a look at it, share it with your friends. That's all for this lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed it.